episode 25. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, dogmen. Before I bring on tonight's guest, I've got an encounter I want to read for you. A listener in England submitted this story to me about an encounter she had when she was 6. She was spending the night at a friend of her mom's house, who lived right on the edge of the moors in England. The story reads, and I quote, "I was 6 years old and staying at my mom's friend's house because she was babysitting me. She lives next to the moors. I can't disclose the exact location because I don't have permission to do that, sorry. It was summer and I remember spending the whole day and night at her house. She has 2 children who are my age, so we played in the pool as well as on the slide and swing set in her huge garden all day. It was a beautiful day. I remember having a bath early that evening and then watching Alice in Wonderland in their living room with them before bed. At around 9 p.m. or so, my mom's friend took me to the spare room where I would spend the night. It was a huge room, but all that was in it was a bed and a side table with a lamp on it. The window didn't have curtains on it. I woke up early in the morning for some reason. Maybe it was because it wasn't my own bed. Anyway, everyone else was still sleeping, so I decided to look out the window. From my window, I could see a wide, grassy open space with some woodland to the left and right. A dirt path ran right through the middle for walkers and bikers. There were lights in the garden, but they were only little garden lights, so the lighting wasn't great. I think the only reason I wound up seeing the dogman was due to the full moon. That's when I saw it. It was just there, beyond the garden. Her garden was around 40 meters in length. Behind that was the edge of the moors, which was at least 30 meters past the garden. The dogman was huge. It was down on all fours. Its head was just like what you'd expect to see on a huge wolf. Its fur seemed to be black. I could see it had pointed ears like my American Akita. Its fur looked messy to me. I couldn't see any kind of eye color or what its teeth looked like. It had canine-style back legs, but its arms were more human in appearance. It looked like it had elbows. It kind of looked like a huge wolf, but the sheer size of the head and the fact that its arms looked more human made it look different. At first, it was just sniffing the air as I was watching it. I had a side view of it at the time. It had a snout like that of a wolf, and it was elongated. That's when it stretched like a dog that just woke up from a long nap. After stretching, even though I was indoors about 70 meters away, it looked right at me, like it knew I was at the window. When it looked at me, its eyes looked dark. I didn't see any reflection. That's when it slowly went up onto 2 legs, looking right at me the whole time. It felt like it was looking right at my soul. That's the only way to describe it. Its ears twitched a little, and then it just casually walked away on 2 legs into the woodland. I didn't see a tail as it walked away, and it never looked back. It didn't seem to care that I had seen it. As it moved, it walked kind of like a person with an attitude. It might sound crazy, but it kind of moved its arms like a person, but yet had canine legs. Its shoulders were like a well-built person, but with a huge wolf face. It was muscular like someone who works out and has that perfect toned body. When it had gone into the trees, I went straight into my mom's friend's bedroom. I told them I couldn't sleep. A few weeks after I saw that dogman, my mom's friend's cat went missing. I didn't tell anyone about what I had seen that morning until I was 16. After I met my husband, I eventually told him about it. Because the image of what I saw is still in my head, I won't go out at night. Ever since my encounter, I seem to keep looking for answers for what I saw. That dogman changed my life without a doubt. It's been hard for me to deal with it. My husband and I live out in the country for his sake. We have 5 huge guard dogs and a 6-foot fence around our property. We also have guns just to make me feel safe. My husband's taught me how to defend myself, and we both practice martial arts together. The idea of ever seeing a Dogman again still terrifies me. Seeing that Dogman really changed how I look at things. Thank you for letting me share this with you. Keep up the good work because your radio station has helped me so much already. It really has." End of quote. Thanks for sharing that encounter with us. I'm glad to hear the show's helped you. That's what it's all about. Our guest tonight is Rebekah L. Purdy. Late one night in 2010, while on a camping trip with her family, she had a terrifying Dogman encounter that she's here to talk about tonight. Rebekah, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Would you please give us a brief bio on yourself?
My name is Rebekah Purdy. I am from Michigan. I have a government job that I work through the court system here in Michigan. I am also prior military, and I am married, and I have 6 kids, and we've only got 3 that are still left at home right now. And that's my day job. I also, as a hobby, I am a writer, and I write teen books.
From talking to you in the pre-interview, you made it pretty clear that you're not a stranger to the woods. Please tell us about your experience out there in the woods to help get the point across that you're not the type of person to mistake common wildlife for a Dogman.
I've grown up in Michigan. I used to hunt a lot with my dad when I was younger. My husband and I, we do a lot of camping with our kids. We do a lot of hiking, fishing, that sort of thing. We do take camping trips up north every year, and we've lived here pretty much our whole lives, other than we both spent a few years in the military as well. So, I mean, we're used to being out in the woods and know the wildlife that lives in Michigan and that kind of thing. So, I mean, we know there's bears, wolves, coyotes, deer, that kind of thing. So, we're really aware of the woods.
I know you want to stay to a certain degree anonymous, but can you give us a vague idea how far you live from where this encounter took place?
Well, we live in the Lower Peninsula in western Michigan, and it's probably a good 5 or 6 hour drive up to the place that we do go camping every year. So it is quite a ways up there, but my husband is originally from the Upper Peninsula, so he is pretty familiar with the area up there.
Now, I know that this encounter, without telling us what actually happened, I know this encounter happened close to a ghost town named Fayette. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, Fayette is actually a historic town up there. It's a lot of ruins that they have over in this town, and you can go over and visit them. And then there's like a long path that will lead you back over to where the actual campsites and stuff are. So the town is separated from the actual campsites themselves. Other than the state park people that come up there to run it during the days, I mean, there's pretty much nothing up there other than ruined buildings and that kind of things where you can actually go through and do tours of the actual town and stuff like that.
As if camping next to a ghost town, or I should say more accurately, close to a ghost town, wasn't bad enough. When you described the way that this forest you were camping in when you had your encounter looked, that paints a really scary picture. Tell us about, since we can't see what that forest looked like, do the best you can to paint a picture for us.
When you're walking up through the woods, I mean, there's a lot of rocky outcroppings. The trees are kind of like knotted and twisted. They like grow almost like out of the rocks, and they're just, they give you this picture of like a dark fairy tale type picture, like just the way some of these trees are shaped and knotted. And there's some areas where you go through them and it gets, you know, pretty dark and dreary kind of setting, but there's like a lot of granite type rock outcroppings that are just coming out everywhere in the woods. And I mean, you really got to watch your step when you're trying to walk through them. But yeah, so they already give you that kind of picture of like almost like a twisted fairy tale, just to, you know, just how these trees are growing out.
Have you ever seen Lord of the Rings?
I have.
So I'm getting the impression it looks like Fangorn Forest.
Yes, I mean, exactly. I mean, maybe not quite as thick in some areas, but it's just the way like those trees are just kind of twisted out and stuff. And there are like little natural walkways almost, or natural stairs that are created by some of these like granite outcroppings too. So it's just, it makes it even more almost like the Lord of the Rings, I guess you would say.
Yeah, that paints a pretty creepy picture right there. Doesn't sound all that inviting. Before you actually talk about the details of the encounter, had you ever heard, or have you heard since the encounter took place, about anyone else having any other trouble like what you had at this site of the encounter that you had?
No, prior to that, we really didn't, we didn't know a ton about the Dogman to begin with. My husband and I, we watch like Finding Bigfoot and Ghost Hunters, we think that stuff's kind of interesting, but we never really, been believers as you would or had heard much about it. My husband had, sometimes there's little stories that you might hear, legends that you might hear about some places in northern lower Michigan, but it wasn't something that we believed in or were really going out researching kind of thing. And after it happened, I know that my husband and I both took to the internet trying to see if there was anybody else who had encounters, because at that point you kind of want that reassurance that you're not crazy and that you're not the only ones who have seen something. So I think after the fact, we really took more to the web just to kind of, see if there were other experiences out there. And there was nothing like right in that exact area that we came across. I think there was something that somebody had mentioned, a possible like Bigfoot type thing, but that was like further down, I think, on the Garden Peninsula than where we were.
To address what you just said, you're definitely not crazy, and you're most certainly not the only people to experience something like this. It's hard to believe, but that's how it is. Also, from what you just said, I got the impression that since you did watch Finding Bigfoot, that you were open to the possibility of Bigfoot existing, but you didn't buy into the possibility of dogmen being a reality.
Absolutely. I think it's easier to grasp, like with Bigfoot, because it could, in my mind, just be some undiscovered type ape or something like that, where I think when you think Dogman, you're thinking, okay, Hollywood B-movie, werewolves. You're thinking that kind of thing where, I don't know, like, where you're apt to believe it, like vampires and stuff like that. It kind of falls in the realm with that, where it's like, yeah, I don't know. You're more of that mind frame where, like, ghosts and Bigfoot, I think people are a little bit more, easily to latch on to it, even though there's not foolproof, but at least people are getting, like, footprint casts and stuff like that. So it makes it a little bit more believable, and I guess I'd be more, at the time I think I would have been more open to, somebody saying that existed than Dogman.
Well, that wouldn't have made you any more different than most people. It's easier to buy into the whole Bigfoot phenomenon than the Dogman one. I give you that. As far as Dogman versus Bigfoot, I would rather hope that Bigfoot was a reality than Dogman would be when you consider the creep factor. All right, Rebekah, well, please tell us about your encounter. Instead of starting off when you're at the campsite, please tell us about from the moment that you got into the vehicle in the Lower Peninsula where you live, heading up to where you had this encounter. Please start there in your driveway and walk us through step by step what happened to you.
Okay. It was the summer of 2010. We were actually taking a trip up to the Upper Peninsula with our younger 3 kids. We'd been up there quite a bit. Like I said, my husband's originally from the Upper Peninsula, and this was one of those trips where our older kids were now into college, and so we wanted to take our younger 3 up there because our older kids had already experienced pretty much everything up there. So it was just one of those things where we kind of wanted to show them everything that was up there. So my husband likes to leave really, really early in the morning, so it was dark 30 in the morning because he wants to miss all the traffic going up to the bridge. And every year or two when we go up, we stop at a place called Seashell City, so everybody can kind of get like little souvenirs and stuff before we actually get up across the bridge and stuff. So we did that, and then we stayed overnight. That first night, we were just over the bridge at, I'm trying to think of the name of the park that we stayed at, but it was, I believe, Straits Campground. It's like right across from the bridge, and you can actually see the bridge from there. So we started off our trip just staying right there. And then we kind of looped around like the whole Upper Peninsula. We went to like the Porcupine Mountains, Oswald's Bear Ranch. Yeah, so we went to several different places. We were trying to basically do like a different area every night or every 2 nights just so the kids could kind of get an experience of it. I know we took them up to Iron Mountain and let them go into the caves there and the old mines and stuff. You have to ride the old mine cars down, and stuff like that. So we just wanted to make it, a really big deal for the kids to kind of experience our home state and just see everything that there was to see here. And so one of our last stops actually on our trip was in Fayette. During the day when we first got there, we set up our tent and our campsite, and then we went over to the historical town, and we walked around there for a little while because we wanted to show the kids, like, all the ruins, and they have, like, the old houses up there from the people that used to work there. So, yeah, so we did a lot of that kind of stuff, and then when we came back to our campsite, we ate dinner, and then we took the kids down. It was starting to get a little bit dark out, but we wanted to take the kids down to the Lake Michigan, so, because there's a lot of, like, a rocky beach down there, and there's, like, a lot of areas that you can sit on big rocks and stuff. We wanted to watch the sunset, and then, because we do right now live a little bit closer to the city, we don't get a lot of that, the big open night skies where you can, stare up at the stars and stuff like that. So we did take the kids down, and we did stay down there until it was, like, after dark, and I know we had to come back up through the woods, and my husband and I both had flashlights, and, I mean, you could barely see a couple feet in front of you, even with the flashlights on, and I know it was hard to keep, like, your footing coming up through there. And so we came back and we sat around the campfire for, I don't know, probably a good hour or so, just watching the fire and talking. The kids were kind of playing around and making s'mores. And then after that, we had brought the kids over to the tent, and then at that time, we had a tent. It actually had 2 rooms in it, and so the one room, we had me, my husband, and my daughter. At the time, my daughter was, I believe she was around 9. I think 8 or 9 for this trip. And then we had my 2 sons with us as well, but they were in the attached room on the tent. When we went to bed, we had tried to get the fire out as much as you can, but as anybody who knows who goes camping a lot, you still have, like, those embers in there, and so it's still kind of glowing a little bit, and, when the wind comes through, it kind of makes your fire restart again as you would. But, so we, at that point, had got everybody into the tents, and, we were laying down. We were probably in there, I would say, probably maybe 45 minutes, an hour, and the first thing we heard was, like, there was, like, this low growl behind our tent, and, like, something had brushed up against the back of our tent, and my daughter was laying right next to me, and she turned to me, and she was just like, "Mom, did you hear that?" I did hear it, and, I was like, okay, do I tell her I heard it? Because, I was kind of scared, and I didn't want to freak her out, but at the same time, it's like, I didn't want, her to think that she was the only one that heard it, so, I'm like, yeah, I heard it, and then I turned to my husband, and I'm like, did you hear it? And he's like, yeah, but just, just be quiet and just try to go to sleep. And so I'm like, okay, something just growled, I don't know how I'm going to sleep, but I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll try to go to sleep. And then I think it was about 20 minutes after that, like, our fire outside our tent had come back to life, like that the wind had picked up a little bit, and so, like, our flames were kind of flickering, and you could kind of see them playing off the actual side of the tent. And then, like, this is the part where it's hard to describe. It's like all of a sudden, like, this shadow, like, passed, like, outside our tent, like, over in the area, the side that our fire was on, and so, we're standing at the shadow. It was standing on 2 feet like an actual human was, and it walked up. There's, like, an incline behind our tent. It literally walked up the incline of the tent, and when it got there, it kind of turned a little bit, and, like, you could see the head. It looks like a head of, all I can see is, like, a wolf or a dog. I don't know. I mean, I can't even explain it. It wasn't human. That's all I can say is, the face shape, it looks like the snout of a dog, and it just kind of traipsed as you would, like, up the incline. And my first thought, was, I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck is that? And my daughter, like, grabbed my shoulder, and she jerked me back, and she's like, "Mom, did you see that? Did you see that?" And I was like, my first thought was, okay, maybe my husband's messing with me, and I don't know, how I could even think that, because looking back, my husband is seriously laying right next to me, but I remember just, like, whipping around, and I was like, knock it off. I'm like, just quit messing around. And my husband's laying there with his arms behind his head, propping his head up almost like he was, like, with a pillow or something, and he's like, I'm laying right here, and I was like, did you see that? Did you see that? He's like, yes, I saw that. I don't know what the hell it was. And he's like, just be quiet, just be quiet. And so at that point, were laying there, and it walked just like right to our campsite, and, you know, then it was gone. And I mean, in your head, you're trying to come up with like every logical explanation for it. I mean, we've lived in Michigan our whole lives. I mean, we've been out in the woods a lot. We know what coyotes or wolves look like. And I would have defaulted to, yeah, it was probably just a coyote, because I know they have, you know, a lot of them up there. But there's just this fact that it was walking on two legs. I mean, dogs and wolves, coyotes, they walk on four legs. And, you know, and then you start thinking, you know, maybe this was somebody in a mask. But if you've been in the woods in the Upper Peninsula, I mean, you know how dark it is. I mean, you cannot maneuver these woods without a flashlight. And whatever this was did not have a flashlight. And I don't see why somebody would go out in the woods in a mask in the middle of the night. I mean, they wouldn't be able to see to walk. I don't know. I mean, to this day, like I said, we've gone back up to the same campsite every year since then, and we've never had another encounter. We've never heard anything else like this. I mean, we've even went as far as buying trap cameras, because we wanted to, it's like as scared as we were that night and not being able to sleep and going out and looking for footprints or just anything to say, oh, look, there really was something here. I mean, we went out to buy these trap cameras in hopes that, not that we want to have another encounter, but if we did, we want answers to know what it was out there. And so that's kind of been our drive, I think, why we go back up there every year, is because it's like you want validation that there was something there, that you're not crazy. And I mean, I know what we saw. I can't explain it. And I mean, we've been on like websites after the fact trying to figure out, has anybody else had experiences up in this area? And so it's just one of those things where, I mean, I think I want to know, you know, what it was. I mean, looking back, I mean, the only explanation or anything that even came close to the description of what we saw through that tent was the Dogman. And I mean, you know, for a while, like, you don't want to tell people it, but then I did do a blog post, like I said earlier in our pre-interview, and it was more as just to kind of have some validation to see if, like, anybody else had experiences. So I thought, you know, if I post something, you know, maybe somebody else will come back and say, you know, hey, look, I had an experience too. But it's like, at the same time, it's like you don't want people to think you're crazy, but you know what you saw.
You mentioned that the Dogman walked up the slope towards your tent, Rebekah. I'm getting the impression that when it did that, it was close enough to touch the wall.
It was pretty close. I don't know, like, feet-wise, because my daughter was on one side of me and my husband was on the other. So, I mean, but it was close enough to cast a decent-sized shadow. So, I mean, I know the first time when we first heard it behind the tent, it did brush. I mean, you could hear it, like, brush right up against the side of the tent. And then the second time when it came around, it was a few feet further out from the tent.
If it was that close to the tent and it was backlit by that campfire, I take it you had a good chance to take a look at its legs as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, there was no clothing. That's why, you know, like, your first thought is it's human, but then when you see that there's not a human face there, it's not built quite like because nobody's going to walk around naked in the middle of the night, or at least most people I know aren't going to do that. So it didn't make sense to me.
When you looked at its legs and you mentioned the whole man-looking thing, I take it its legs looked more man-like and not like a canine with that backwards knee look.
Well, it had a little bit of like a slouch to it, but I mean, like I said, you know, with the shadow play, I mean, you're trying to get, but my focus was mainly on its head because it was so just beyond belief, I guess. I mean, so my main focus, like I said, was on the head and just the fact that it kind of like slunk, I guess is the word you would use, like up that hill, just the way it came up. It wasn't like bent all the way over. It was on two legs. And like I said, you know, but my main focus was mainly on the head just because of the snout on it.
There's just something so creepy about that idea, that mental image. I'm just sitting here thinking about what it must have been like and what must have been going through your mind when you saw that shadow on your tent wall. I can't even imagine. I know there've got to be some Hollywood producers taking notes right now, getting ideas about making some kind of a movie on this, because that's just straight out of a nightmare.
Well, and it's one of those things, too, where, like, you're terrified, like, you don't want to move. I mean, you don't want to make a noise, but, you know, I just remember turning to my husband because I'm like, you know, obviously he's the man, and you're like, okay, think protector, and you're like turning like, okay, what's going on? And you're kind of hoping, okay, maybe it's not really there, and I'm just seeing things. But, you know, when you have three people all seeing the same thing, and we're all freaking out about the same thing, and normally my husband's a pretty, you know, brave guy. I mean, he's prior military as well, and normally he's the one, you know, if we're going out in the woods, he'll be the one to have, you know, make sure we have a gun or a knife or something with us. And that particular night, I mean, we didn't have anything in the tent, because looking back now, he's even said, you know, I almost wish we would have unzipped that, just the window, just so we could look out. He goes, but I didn't dare, not knowing what it was and not having any way to defend yourself if it happened to, like, not like you looking at it, you know what I mean? So you, in hindsight, you think of, okay, maybe we should have did this different or this different, but at the time, it's like you're so shocked and scared that, I mean, the only thing running through your mind is, oh my gosh, I hope this thing leaves, don't come in the tent. I mean, those are your two thoughts right there.
Oh, I'm so glad it didn't. I'm also glad that you did not make the mistake of opening up that window and looking out. You've got three different tiers of Dogman eyewitnesses. You've got those that get the impression a Dogman was around but didn't see it. You've got the people that fall into the category where they got a glimpse of one but not a very good one. Then you've got the category of people that got a good close-up and personal look. And you don't want to be in that last category. The problems just start right there at that point. Now, from what you've said, I get the impression that you didn't pack up and leave out of there as soon as the threat seemed to be gone. You, the way you've been talking, I get the impression you did all spend the night.
Yeah, we ended up staying out because we'd already paid for the site. And at that time, you know, I mean, when you have 6 kids, you don't throw away extra money like if you've paid for something, you know, which looking back, I know none of us really didn't sleep that night. My 2 boys were oblivious to the whole thing. I mean, they slept through the whole thing. And so the next day, as we're talking about, because we just kept rehashing the story like the whole rest of the way home that day. I mean, we just kept talking about it because it's like trying to make sense of everything after it happens. But like that whole night though, it's like we didn't sleep. It's like you're scared, but then you're also scared, okay, if we go to pack up, is it still going to be waiting out there? So it's like you have all these things like rolling through your head, okay, so why wouldn't you run out of there? But then when you have to tear a tent down, you got 3 kids you got to pack in, you know, is it going to make more sense to just be quiet and hope it stays away, or, you know, get out there and, you know, make yourself known to it? So it's kind of one of those things where we chose the latter and just stayed put.
Well, that might have been the best course of action. Maybe it was still around, and if you would have gone out and tried to break down things to pack up, maybe problems would have started. But the next morning, when you unzipped the tent to go outside, tell us about what you saw. I know you looked around after you went out.
The first thing actually me and my husband did do is we walked around like our entire campsite. I mean, we walked in the area where we're pretty sure it looked like from the shadow where it had come up at. I mean, we were looking for like footprints, claw marks. I mean, just anything to give us, I guess, some type of idea that it was actually there. I mean, we went behind our tent where the thing had brushed up against our tent. I mean, we've scoured like everything right behind our site because we were like, okay, there's got to be some proof that this was really here. That, I mean, even after all 3 of us saw it, it's like it's still unreal almost, or unbelievable, because you just don't expect stuff like that to happen. And so, like I said, you know, we really did scour the whole campsite. I mean, just looking for anything. And, I mean, we didn't find any evidence at all that there had been anything there.
Considering what you saw, heard, you name it, that night, and also considering what you saw, heard, you name it, the next morning when you went out and were looking around for evidence, did you ever get the impression that maybe that one Dogman wasn't alone?
And that's where kind of like, I'm not sure. It's just one of those things where, because like I said, the first thing we heard was right behind the tent with the low growl and brushing against it. And then the next thing was like a little bit further over, coming from a little bit different angle. So I don't know if there could have been more than one or if it was just the one. So it's like you're looking at all those things because, you know, normally, obviously, I know with like wolves and coyotes, they usually will go with a pack or running around and stuff like that. But yeah, we looked around for everything. I mean, just any indication that there was just something there. And, looking back, I don't know if it could have been more than one because, like I said, there was two different placements of where we heard or saw it. So it very well could have been more than one. Just like I said, with the one thing behind the tent and the next one next to the tent. So I don't know if it was the same thing or different.
Before you saw that scary shadow of the Dogman on that tent wall, were there any precursors to give you a clue that something might not be right? Any strange smells, any strange sounds, anything like that?
Not really. I mean, everything I think was, pretty calm. I mean, everybody was kind of settling in for the night. I mean, it was during the actual week itself, so the campground's not as busy during the actual week. So there's a lot of older people that stay up there and like campers and stuff like that, but there's also like a lot of people with younger kids that stay up. But it was actually during the week itself, so there wasn't like a ton of people up there, and so everything just seemed normal and quiet. I mean, there wasn't like anything out of the ordinary that would have caught me off guard, like, I think something's going to happen kind of thing. So yeah, it was just normal.
Now, in the pre-interview, Rebekah, you mentioned that you did hear a strange type of sound in the woods. I'm not clear on when exactly you heard this strange sound, but I think you know what I'm getting at. Could you tell us about that?
Okay, yeah. The only other weird thing that had happened that night was at one point it sounded like it was like after, kind of, I guess, like before and then a little bit after the whole episode was like almost like a faint drum type sound. I don't know how to explain it, almost like a battle drum type sound in the woods. I don't know where it came from, and like I said, we have gone up there every year since this has happened, and we've never like heard any of these same sounds. We've never had any other experiences. I can't explain the drum sounds. I wanted to write it off as buoys, but the buoys are pretty far away, and they make more of a clingy ding type sound. It's not like, I know what drums sound like, so it was more of like a drumming, like a heavy drum sound.
Strange. That's very strange. Did you say that you had or had not been camping there before?
The year that this happened was actually our first family vacation of camping at this actual campsite. So that was our first year we ever stayed there. And then every year after that, we've returned back to Fayette. There's like something about the place. I mean, we really like the campgrounds themselves, but it's also too is I think we still kind of want just a validation of what we saw up there. And like I said, after all this had happened, the next summer, my husband had purchased trap cameras, and we put them out every year behind our campsite because we always pick a campsite against the woods because it's like we want to know what we saw up there, and we have not had any other encounters. We have not seen anything else the same. We've not heard anything else like we did that night. And it's almost like now that you're actually prepared that something could happen, it won't happen. But when you're like least expecting it is when it happens. It's just the strangest thing.
That is pretty strange. The way you talk about this place where you camped, I'm kind of on the fence here. Is that an established campsite, or is it just a place for the most part where you pitched your tent in the woods?
It is an established campsite. They do have like marked out campsites. They have some that are like backed right against the woods because there's some paths in the woods that'll go right down to like, they have like two different beaches, but the one beach is pretty much like all that granite type rock and woodsy. And then other parts of it are a little less naturey, if you want to say that. But, so it is an established one. It doesn't have a ton of sites, though. It's not like a huge campground where you've got thousands of people or anything like that. It's a relatively small campground itself, and they don't have showers or anything like that up there. It's the outhouse type toilets and stuff like that. So you can hook your camper up to like just the water and electric, but you don't have like dump stations or anything like that up there. It's more of a rustic type setting.
I see. Well, not including family members, who was the first person you or whoever else in the family told about that encounter?
Okay, let's see. You mean who else we would have told about it?
That's right. I know you talked about it length in the vehicle coming home, but after you left that campsite, who was the first person that any of you told about that encounter, and what was their reaction to it?
I think probably the first person I told was probably my sister, just because I'm really close with her. She was just kind of blown away by it, and then I told a couple of my coworkers, just because I'm really good friends with them, and then I told just a couple people in my writers group about it. But I mean, it's just one of those things where I definitely wasn't telling everybody about it yet, and not until the point where after me and my husband did a bunch of research trying to figure out, okay, what could this have been? Has anybody else seen anything even semi close to what we've seen up in this area? Then at that point is when I did go on my blog and mention it. It was one of those things where it's you don't want to sound crazy, but you want validation. You want somebody else to say, yeah, I've had an encounter, or I've experienced something similar to that. Because it's on the one hand, you don't want to sound crazy, and you don't want people, pointing fingers oh my gosh, that's really weird. But then on the second hand, you're looking at it and you're thinking, I want to share this experience with other people, because what if somebody else had an experience, or what if somebody else is going through the same thing of, should I share this story? Should I not share this story? Are people going to think I'm crazy? So I think, I was looking at it more from that perspective, where my husband, I think, has been a lot more closed mouth about it, because he doesn't want people to think he's crazy. He did reach out to one person who I believe, I can't even remember her name now, who does some types of researches and stories on them, and he had talked to her briefly. I think he just had more questions of, do you know if anybody else has had any sightings up in this particular area? Because I think she makes it her business kind of to study up on these kind of things. And so he kind of reached out to her just as okay, I don't want to share this with everybody, but I'd like to know, has anybody else had these experiences?
The responses that you got are pretty common for people that see these things. That's what really tugs at your heartstrings, the idea that someone like you could have such a horrible experience, see something that's so terrifying. It affects people in different ways. Some people see these things and handle the trauma a lot better than others. I'm getting the impression that you handled your encounter a lot better than most, in fact. I think you did say that you do continue to go back there to camp from time to time.
Yeah, we do. And like I said, I think a lot of it, we really do like the Upper Peninsula, the beauty of the woods, and just, you can go miles without seeing a house. We like that kind of life. Then again, like I said, on the other hand, it's almost it's not like you're trying to invite trouble in, but it's you want to just have that validation of, okay, I just need to know what I saw. And if I see it again, maybe that will make it more real. Not that I want to be outside with it, but if we would just have a picture or something just to show that, okay, yes, this is what we saw that night. Because obviously we didn't get out of the tent. We're brave, but not that brave. So, we didn't obviously hop out of the tent or anything. So, I'm glad we didn't, because I don't know if seeing it, on the other hand, is that going to, make me have nightmares? Am I going to be scared to go out in the woods anymore? But then, you want just a picture or something just to show that, okay, yes, we really did see something up here, but I don't want the actual physical contact of going out there to see it.
Oh, I don't blame you there. I was going to ask you, that touches on one of the questions I had for you. Do you or don't you want to have their existence proven? But it sounds like you already answered the question.
Yeah, I just want to know what we saw. And I think a lot of times people are kind of scared of the unknown, and they don't want to know. But on the other hand, it's I think it's kind of conceited as a race if we think that there's not the possibility of other things out there. Not to say that I believe every paranormal thing is real, but when you have, something happen, you want that validation. It's yeah, in your heart what you saw, but to be able to freely talk about it with people and say, yeah, look, see, it is real, and look, this experience proves, that something's there. I don't know for sure, but I just know that nothing else fit the description of what we saw. And if you would have asked me a couple years prior to even having that encounter, do you believe in Dogman? I would have said, heck no. And I would have said, no, that's B-movie stuff, that's, Hollywood. After it happens, then you start looking into stuff, and then you realize, okay, some of these people have been talking about this for centuries, legends and stuff, and then you're okay, these had to have stemmed from somewhere.
Let me ask you about the lingering effects, Rebekah. What kind of PTSD or nightmare issues, if any, have you experienced as a result of that encounter?
I think the biggest thing for me is it really is when we go back out camping again, is usually those first couple of nights up there, you have a really, really, really hard time sleeping, because you know what you've heard or seen before. So I think I spend a lot more time awake on our camping trips. And like, I mean, I don't sleep as well during our camping trips. I'm constantly, you know, like every little noise, you try to over-examine it. You try to, you know, you're wondering, okay, what was that? What was that? And, you know, or even in the mornings when you have to go out and start your vehicle to, you know, and it's still dark out because I, you know, have a long commute to my day job. And so it's usually dark when I leave. So I think I'm a little more paranoid with being alone in the dark kind of thing, or if we're near woods and stuff like that. I'm a lot more paranoid about stuff like that than I probably would have been prior to this happening. So I think my biggest thing is just, especially like I said, when we're camping, I really, really have a hard time sleeping just because like every little noise, you're wondering if, okay, is this going to happen again kind of thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to ask you about how this encounter might or might not have followed you home. A lot of people think that a Dogman encounter ends the moment that the Dogman is out of sight. But it sure seems like Dogman encounters last a lifetime.
Well, and I think, too, is like once, like you said, once you have that experience, it stays with you. I mean, it's not something you're going to forget. I mean, I can remember, you know, just like every detail of that, like whole night, like that camping trip, like if of Fayette, you know, being up there and staying there. It's one of those things where like you replay it in your head, you know, not just the, oh, is it real, but the, you know, that fear that you had when you did see it coming up, and then the wondering, okay, would this ever happen again, or, you know, could this happen again? And I mean, so you do replay those things over and over, and I think it's hard for people who haven't had an experience to understand that when you have something like this happen, I mean, you want, like again, you know, back to the validation, it's like you want that validation, and you can't let it go because it's like it almost becomes like an obsession, because it's like you're trying to research, you're trying to, you know, make sense of what happened to you.
Along the lines of what you just said, there really is no way for anyone that hasn't seen a Dogman, hasn't experienced what it's like to have one just feet away or in your presence. There's no way for someone that hasn't been through that to understand what you, Rebekah, or other Dogman eyewitnesses have been through and go through back on that whole it's not over the moment the Dogman leaves your presence thing. If you haven't been through it, you'll never know what it's like. And that's got to be a huge source of frustration for you.
I think it is, because it's like you want to kind of talk about it, but yet you feel weird because majority, you know, 95% of the people, 99% of the people around you have no idea what you're talking about, and they think it's fake. And you know, I do have, you know, a couple of people that are like, I mean, who know me, obviously, they know I'm not the type of person that's going to, I mean, I do write and stuff, but I'm not going to make something like this up. I mean, there's just, I mean, no point in it, especially, you know, I have a government job. I mean, it would look foolish, you know, I'm like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, for me to make something like this up, it just, you know, I think that's the hardest part, is you want people to believe you. You want people to know that fear that you went through, or to know that you really did see something. And I mean, you're going to always have your believers, you're going to always have your skeptics, and you know, I was a skeptic, you know, before this. I mean, if you would have told me before this happened that the Dogman was real, I would have said, no, that's a bull, I don't believe it, it's a made up story, you know, to scare kids. But, you know, after you have it, it does change you. I mean, you're looking at everything a lot different. I mean, when you walk into the woods, you're paying a lot closer attention to what's around you, that's for sure.
Oh, sure, that only makes sense. You know, there are a lot of bad things. It goes without saying, there are a lot of bad things that come along with having an encounter with a Dogman, but it being so hard to find someone else to relate what you went through, to relate what you're going through as a result of that encounter, the fact that it's so hard to find someone like that that's been through it too, to relate to, that's got to be one of the worst things about this. I feel for you. I really do. What is the worst thing about having had this encounter?
I think it's just that it brings more of that fear. Like, I mean, 'cause like I said, you know, I love going hiking and camping and stuff. I think it just, like, again, brings more of that fear to the forefront of, you know, what could actually be in the woods. I think it gets you to that point. I mean, I'm at least lucky in the part where, you know, my husband and daughter, you know, had the experience with me. So, I mean, in that aspect, I at least have some people to talk to it about. But again, you know, I think the biggest fear for at least me, is just, sometimes wondering or being a little bit more fearful of going into the woods, and, those first couple nights on the camping trip of, reliving okay, this happened a few years ago when we were here, is it going to happen again? So I think that's probably like the biggest thing I would have to say.
Well, that makes sense. You are an author, Rebekah. Please talk about your favorite books that you've written so that the listeners can go out there and buy these great books.
Okay, yeah, actually, I write for young adults and teens. I love, fantasy type stuff, so I do write a lot of, fantasy, paranormal type books, but my most recent release, which I'm really proud of, it actually takes place in Michigan. It's a book I wrote as a teen, actually, but I wrote it as a short story, and then it got published this last year, and I've had pretty good success with it, but it's entitled The Winter People, and it's about a girl named Salome, and she falls through the ice as a child, but she's actually lured out on the ice by this voice in the woods, and after she falls through it, she's rescued by some beings, and these beings kind of bring her to safety, but they warn her to stay out of the woods and away from this pond, or bad things will happen. And so she gets this fear of winter, and it's to the point where she can't be out in winter, and she's just petrified of it. And she basically stays away from these woods, and then when she's a teen, she ends up being forced back into the woods, and now she's trying to deal with trying to figure out what's actually out in the woods, and, trying to prove that she's not crazy, that because she does still hear voices out in the woods that nobody else can hear. So it's just about her journey of trying to figure out what's actually out there and whether or not she should trust the people that are around her, because she's got some new people around her that have just kind of started showing up, and it all kind of stems back to the fact of what had happened to her when she was younger and the people that are out there. So yeah, it's a fun book, and I really like writing and stuff like that, making stories up. But yeah, fantasy stuff is probably my crutch. So
it sounds like a good read. I know that you've got a blog. Will listeners be able to not only read your blog, but get access, be able to buy your books from visiting your blog?
Yeah, we have all my links are run along the side of my blog with all my books. Like I said, I do write the fantasy stuff, the paranormal stuff. I do have some just regular romance stuff out there too. But yeah, I just like the fantasy stuff though. So.
Oh, I don't blame you. That's my favorite genre to read. Please tell us how to find your blog.
Google my name at Rebekah L Purdy. Usually it'll pop my blog right up for you. And then I'm also on Facebook and on Twitter. So I'm pretty much all over social media.
Do you have any comments, closing points you'd like to share with us?
I think my big thing is just that I know there are a lot of non-believers out there, and, I know until you have something happen to you that it is really hard to fathom, and, I would just hope that they would at least listen to people who have had these experiences and just not write them off as crazy to begin with, and people that have had the experiences. I know it's hard to come forward with them, but I think it's kind of a benefit too, because at the same time you can, kind of reach out to other people who've also had similar experiences, which, that's my main reason for agreeing to the interview today, is just, I want to share my story. I want other people to know that they're not alone, and that, it doesn't matter who you are. Anybody can have an experience.
Very well said, Rebekah. Very well said. I can't thank you enough for agreeing to come on the show tonight and share your story. Thanks again so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I really do appreciate it. Don't be a stranger, okay?
All right, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Have a great night.
Yep, you too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.